qualifier for the regional finals.
Well, and they started off so strong this season. We were calling them mini eclipse because they mirrored them in so many ways. They had a lot of very good opening strats that were very clever, and they constantly were putting themselves in good positions, but then it was that second late game play that kind of made them falter a little bit, very similar to Rival.
Sure.
However, that kind of wore off. We're not seeing those same sort of aggressive opening plays, not getting the same sort of trades, and it's just something just seems a little bit off with them. So maybe, these roster changes, now that they've kind of been with the team for match day, they've gotten some more practice, maybe we can see them be really effective going forward.
Yeah, well, we are going to get right into our first face-off, and it's going to be with Wally Whiff and X-Soldier. Welcome, gentlemen. I hope you're both doing well tonight. I'm going to ask this question straight to you, X-Soldier. And it is, you have two of the highest damage dealing players on your team for the entire season, yet you find yourselves on the bottom. What exactly do you attribute that to?
Well, for one, we play a lot more battles overall compared to other teams because we usually drag out to like the overtime wins or overtime losses. So since you're looking at the total amount, it just adds on more and more. But if you look at the averages, we're actually somewhere not at the top, which will give you a more big definition of what's going on.
Sure, and that's a very fair assessment.
Fair point. Wally, we've kind of been sitting here talking a little bit about how you guys, your recent form, you guys only have 3 points from your last 5 matches, while you picked up 19 during the first whole round robin. So what do you kind of attribute that drop in form to, and what are you guys doing to kind of fix it?
We've kind of slowly noticed that our Chase, who is our main caller and strat maker, has just been trying to make strats that I don't know if you want to call them are like new meta or attempting to be new meta, but what we've come to realize is that the strats we're making, they might be good, they can be playable, but at like our level of team play and whatnot and player skill, we just can't we just can't perform them the way we want them to happen. And so we started realizing that it's better to play maybe better towards the meta, and hopefully that gets us back into the stride of things and start winning games. Because, I mean, if anything, you can argue we've definitely upped our player skill by picking up Aggressor and Maktub Putin, and we've just been losing. So that's what we think it is. It's definitely our strats is. And it's not that they're bad strats, it's just we're not good enough to do them.
Sure. I mean, you guys were such a strong team, and we hope to see that throughout the second round robin, but again, for whatever reason, it didn't work. And then X-Soldier, my next question, or my last question for you is, what do you really think needs to change on this roster? Not necessarily changing the players, but their overall gameplay to help you guys get out of the spot you're in?
People need to be a lot more serious. That's all I gotta say.
Wow. Very well.
Fair enough.
Well, X-Soldier, what do you have to say to Wally and Deja Vu before we let you guys go?
If you want to win, kick Aggressor.
Seems to work for Rival.
Okay, Wally, what do you got, man?
Good luck, have fun.
All right, guys. Well, that was a nice little shot. All right, we're going to get right into it in just a moment here. If you want to win, kick Aggressor. To be fair, though, that wasn't really the team's problem, even before picking him up.
This form has been going on for a while, and they're bringing in Aggressor. He does have a lot of experience. You got to remember, he was on Call or Wanted last season.
Sure.
He's been around for a while. He is a very talented player individually. And then he joined Rival, and things seemed to go well at the beginning, and then they really dropped in form. They didn't get the results they wanted. And, I guess he felt that wasn't necessarily the best team for him, so he left. And now he finds himself on Deja Vu, which is a team that's more his age, more maybe his play style. So we'll have to see how he can kind of fit into that team and if they can do better than they have been.
Yeah, it's something really interesting that X-Soldier said, though, is that they need to take things more serious.
Well, you've heard the comms of CD. You can hear how that can get.
But they're nothing like highs. I mean, you could argue that team needs to get quote-unquote serious, but I don't know. Maybe there's something else in there. Maybe if we get to ask him again, if it's players not taking just even scrimmages as seriously or practice days, I'm not sure. But, I mean, again, CD has a lot of potential. We're just not seeing it right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And looking over at Deja Vu, though, they have that same sort of potential. And it's just
Oh, absolutely.
they're always that one step behind as of the last couple match days. That you can see what they're going for, you can see the strats and how they're laid out, and in theory, they should work. But the other teams recognize it too soon. They make the first move too often, and Deja Vu are just kind of left second guessing, flat-footed almost. And they kind of just fall behind early matches.
So we are going to get into the map really soon here. Predictions.
I'm going to have to give this one in favor of Deja Vu. Okay. I think CD will make a good fight of it. And as X-Soldier pointed out, they do tend to play a lot of longer series, but I don't have the exact statistics on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to agree with you and give it to Deja Vu, but it wouldn't be too surprising if we saw an upset from CD. Well, Let's get right into it.
Ruinberg, a mixed-type map. The defending team starts the battle on the green, and the attacking team starts at the centre square of the town. Bases are located quite far from each other. Both bases are better controlled from the village when playing a heavy setup. It's better to attack the first base through the top direction with the help of several well-armoured heavy tanks. For the attack on the second base, it's better to use a more mobile setup and either play through the centre or split forces. In general, the map is not easy to play on. Teams often use blind shots and risky shifting of the forces from one flank to another.
Battle number one between Deja Vu and CD. Here we go. Starting off the night, Deja Vu is going to bring two 215Bs, two 113s, a 50B, a TVP, and then an RU 251.
Meanwhile, CD coming in with 5 113s and 2 Tier 9 bats. When I see this lineup right off the gate, right out of the start, I tend to think that they're going to play very aggressive towards the south, use the bat chats down the zero line, and push those 113s straight up into that F-line village, or the Delta village as we call it. We have seen some teams kind of play aggressively towards A6. I think it was Rival that brought the 113s and tried to push straight into A6, and it actually worked out for them.
I think it was Rival, yeah.
In fact, I think it was Rival versus Deja Vu almost. It was one of these teams. So, and that kind of one of the teams more arguably threw the match instead of Rival winning it, but that's besides the point. But they are going to go play for the South right out of the gate. And they're going to get some cap pressure going. However, I don't expect them to stop. They're just going to drive right through. Those bats are working in the South as best they can.
They technically could just leave 2 tanks on cap here and go with the pressure, but no, they're going to take all of those 113s straight into the Delta Village, and they are going to find Nationwide as well as Aggressor in there. And Maktab Putin is not too far behind. In fact, he's going to get spotted. Shots coming off onto Nationwide, and X-Soldier has traded some damage as well.
These 113s are just getting very aggressive. However, they are really worried about Maktab Putin over in that 113.
He could do a lot of damage.
So that they realize that there's this crossfire going on right now, and why they're hesitating is they want to try to get one of these sides out first. So then they can just turn and keep all their armor towards one side. So they're letting Jojo Jackie kind of work on them. However, Merles and Pompous are getting caught out right now, and they may bleed too much HP before they can actually make that push.
And Dojil actually snaps a shot off towards Smiley Rage, but doesn't connect anything. And X-Soldier is still taking damage. Deja Vu could hold this off. They could do a good job in keeping this defense, and they could punish the team of CD very well here.
Yeah, well, they're set up very well in this Delta Village, and they're not in too much of a risk of losing any tanks. But what they need to be doing right now is using the mobility of those bat chats and get them out around. Get them into the village, open up that, maybe go find a scout out there. And if you can open up that F line, you can find side shots on Durgel and Harmless, and you can make a push a bit more viable for these 113s. However, they're just leaving them in the south right now. They're not really opening up the map for the rest of their team.
And still, Deja Vu is finding damage onto the team of CD. Jojo Jackie just taking a shot there. And now Aggressor and My Little Putin are setting up to put even more punishment on these 113s of Team CD. And they're just almost staying stagnant in this offensive position. This doesn't seem like a good plan B, if you will, James.
Yep, and Chase Potato actually dropped down low and lit Smiley Rage in the backfield, but they're choosing not to go chase him. In fact, the Batchats have actually moved closer to the zero line, which makes me wonder if they're going to try to stack up and push the zero line hard with all of their guns.
Well, you heard it from X-Soldier himself. He said they are a team that like to take the fights and they like to brawl, so this could be exactly what they're doing. But is it a mistake?
We'll have to find out. A great little angle here down on the pip. So a lot of players overlook this because it's such a small crack, but you can actually find shots through there. and it can be very useful for working through those villages, but it's one of those things that not a lot of people notice is there all the time, but it's so great when you can utilize it. These 113s still just squaring off. Jojo Jackie down a lot on his HP, Fixer reloaded, and the 113 and MacTap are just sitting there trying to angle against each other, and so far it's been MacTap that's coming out on top. And once again, because those bat shots didn't open up the village, Chase just gets this free roam right now through the F line. He has good side shots on all these guns, and he should be able to find some good bit of damage.
Yeah, but here comes the brawl. It is going to be happening in the village. Jojo Jackie should go down in just a moment. But back to Putin also, huge threat. Still putting out damage, and he's still not down. Finally, he goes down to Smiley Rage. Nationwide going to trade out Fixer Reloaded, and Harmless finding Pompous. Really good situation for Deja Vu here.
Yeah, CD tried to just push through there, blunt force it. The problem was there's so much burst up on the field for Deja Vu that they just couldn't withstand that opening volley, and they bled so much HP that they just don't have anything to work with at this point.
Absolutely. And this is going to be the end of CD, and Deja Vu is actually going to be up 1-0.
To me, it looked like CD expected a different strat out of Deja Vu. They were hoping that they played into it, maybe got aggressive down that 0 line, maybe doing their homework, seeing some of their previous matches, and hoping that they did the same thing. However, after that opening play out of Deja Vu and they got into that village, and CD got opposite of them with all those 113s, it didn't look like CD really had a second plan, essentially. Very similar to what we've talked about with Rival.
That's the biggest issue I had.
They didn't utilize those bat shots at all, and I'm not saying they had to flex them around the town or the 6th line, but they could have even brought them up with the rest of the tanks and used those to clean out that 113 of MacTap while the rest of the guns stayed to the left, and that would have given them a better chance at killing everything. However, they decided to all just push forward in one group, try to focus out MacTap. However, the problem was you had Aggressor and a TVP behind him, My Little Putin also in a 50B, and then you had the two 15Bs, which have very high DPM, that were all sitting there just staring at that road. So when they pushed all 4 of the 113s through it, that they were just sitting there in a crossfire between 3 different angles, and no one's going to withstand that.
And you talk about a stagnant defense. That was actually a very stagnant offense. They made an initial push, and they just stayed there.
Yeah, definitely. And they were constantly losing those trades. And looking at it, Nationwide, just in that 215B, as well as Durgel, doing very good damage overall. They were able to sit there and keep their gun in the fight, hold angles, and they were just able to out-trade a lot of the 113s from CD. And then Milo Putin, 2,500. So when that push did come through, he had clean shots. But then looking at all these 113s, they traded pretty poorly overall for CD. If you look at it, all 5 of the 113s from that team are on the second page here in the bottom 7. So even Fixer Reloaded only doing 512 or 22 damage. Jojo Jackie only doing 884. Just not really able to get in the fight overall.
And seeing Smiley Rage down there is very off-putting. It's very weird. It's not where he usually is on the list at all.
Yeah, well, same with Pompous. Even Pompous was down there. They just weren't able to get into that fight. Like I said, I would have liked to see the bat chats push around and open up that village because they could have gotten Chase out for free.
Right.
And once you have that F line, you have clean shots into the Delta village. They could have hit Harmless, I believe it was, Nationwide, and Durgel in that 113. They were all sitting there where that middle road would have had shots on them, and if they'd killed Chase, no one would have been there to light them.
Yeah.
So they could have gotten a lot of damage off of their team and maybe done enough to open it up for those 113s to make that push. The problem is, like I've talked about, when you don't do enough early damage as the attacking team and you just try to push into a fixed position, you're always going to lose that opening trade. It's going to happen. So it's a matter of, can you get in there for free? If you can sneak in there for free, then yes, being even on HP at that point is fine. However, very rarely are you going to be able to get in there without taking any shots. Normally
Correct.
There's some sort of corridor you have to push through, and they're going to have guns looking for it, and so you're going to lose a couple thousand HP making that opening play. So you already need to have that couple thousand, if not more, up on the other team to even come out even, if not better. And they just didn't do it. They started off down, they got in that village, they lost a couple thousand HP, and then once they tried to make that push later on, they were still down, and they couldn't overchange that deficit.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what they do now on defense as we get ready to go right back into Ruinberg.
Yeah, lineup's coming in here. Deja Vu, a 140, 113s, a T62A, a Batchat, and an RU-251. CD, on the other hand, coming in with a 113, an E5, a 215B, a 50B, 2 Batchats, and an RU-251.
Ooh, look at the way that CD is setting up defense here.
They are getting very aggressive towards that south, including bringing the 113 of Fixer Reloaded down there.
But look where Yato and Ex-Soldier are. They're nowhere to support those tanks at all.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point that they're going to be out of this fight, and if Deja Vu decide to push up and over into these bats, they could get them for free. They'd have a huge overmatch, you'd have to imagine at this point.
A lot of damage is actually put onto Nationwide already, though, so this isn't terrible for CD. Pompous is about at half HP, but they are causing Deja Vu to bleed.
And they do find the kill into Nationwide. They finally work that angle, and they get him down, which is a good start. However, they're bleeding a lot of HP trying to contest that zero line.
And even fighting shots on the aggressor now.
And MacTap's just going to push over onto Pompous in the backfield. And Pompous is actually going to come out on top of those trades.
Pompous has to be careful, though, because now MacTap Putin is coming back around the corner and shots on. He's going to find him. Now it's just Fixer Reloaded in that 113. Still 3 shells left in that clip for Master Putin. And he is going to find the kill right there. So Deja Vu cleaning it up very well.
And that 113 is actually in a position where he can provide cover for MacTap Putin in that bat shot if he wants to get down there and stay hidden.
Oh, a Deja Vu.
And Ex-Soldier finding Chase Potato in the town right now. They're going to trade back and forth. However, Ex-Soldier's already up on HP, so he should win this trade. The HE not penning on Ex-Soldier.
It's almost too little too late, though, here for CD even picking up that kill.
Yeah, definitely. The HP is just in favor of Deja Vu by 3,000, so I don't really see them clawing back into this. An Aggressor and MacTap are going to hunt down Ex-Soldier, and that's going to be a 2-0 lead. Very, very in favor of Deja Vu.
Yeah, so this is very much the Deja Vu that we saw during the beginning of the season.
I don't even necessarily want to go that far, just because I feel that both the plays out of CD were just so out there and maybe not thought all the way through that I don't know that they were ever actually in these fights to where they really could test Deja Vu. That strat, while I like trying to control that zero line as aggressively as they did, they didn't have all their guns there. They tried to leave that E5 up in the north and play the, well, what if they do this? We need someone in position for that. And they just didn't do a good enough job punishing those tanks from Deja Vu, making those trades early on. Pompous got caught out behind that building, and he had to heal us about 1,000 HP, and then MacTap was able to push in and clean him up. Now, provided Pompous made a great play and almost got the better of MacTap Putin despite him being up on HP. But just look at this. Aggressor at 3,900, so doing a good work there. And then MacTap coming in at 2,400. So the new additions for Deja Vu already starting to do pretty decent for him, putting up some good numbers.
And Aggressor, I mean, we see Muriel coming in as well as Pompous doing 2,200, but the rest of Team CD falls on the bottom of the page here.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Nationwide, who got caught out behind that rock, only doing 370 damage. Not what you would expect out of him. However, the position he got put into was a difficult one. With Pompous behind that building, he was able to crossfire him out between that and the tanks in that Delta village. The problem is that to have that happen and to make sure he goes down, Pompous had to commit to that little building by the zero line, and they just got stuck. So not a whole lot they could do. We are about 30 seconds away from going on to our second map, which, as we said, is Ghost Town. And another little interesting tidbit is that Ghost Town is one of Deja Vu's most played maps. They've played it 20 times so far this season. And it's also one of CD's most played maps. However...
What's the win rate?
CD's win rate is sub 30%.
Ooh, not good. Not good at all.
While Deja Vu, looking over there, are sitting just above 50%. So they're pretty consistent, and... Looking down at these notes again, Deja Vu on Ghost Town, 5-5 on attack win-loss. So, holding true there, and then obviously having a better defensive win rate.
All right, well, let's get right into it as we go into the next map between Deja Vu and CD.
Ghost Town. The first absolutely symmetrical map, made especially for 7 versus 7 games. The teams start the battle on opposite sides. There are numerous ways to attack here. One of the bases is located in the central square, the other one at the top of the city. The hardest battles are usually fought for the top base, and this calls for the use of heavy tanks. Sometimes the teams choose fast tanks for spotting and base capturing.
Deja Vu coming in here with 3 T-57s, an IS-7, a grill, and 2 bat shots. Meanwhile, CD coming in with 2 50Bs, 2 215Bs, a 50B.
Is that an AMX-30?
AMX-30 again, the prototype, and a T-10. So that AMX-30 I expect to see up at A2 pretty early on. They've been using that since their last match. I do like that up there a bit more than, say, the RU-250U. It has a better gun, in my opinion. It's a lot harder. Obviously, being a Tier 9, better penetration rates. And the HE shells are going to be a bit more reliable than the RU's HE shells. So he's going to be pretty effective up there. It's just a matter of his team getting him intel, because if you leave him in a situation where he only has blind fire, it does have a lower rate of fire than the RU-251. So
sure,
you need to make sure that you keep him eyes and that those shots that he does fire can be effective.
Well, Maril is going to be there in the AMX-30 to put shots onto that one cap. But so far, no aggression from Deja Vu at all. And it is very early, obviously, but normally, I mean, we see teams already setting up for that one cap.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're trying to just get Yato out. They know he's out there. For those that weren't paying attention, Yato is actually Rename, who's always been on CD. He's just been sitting there with his name as Rename, and he finally submitted
so he finally got a name, yeah.
Yeah, he finally was renamed, I guess you could say. And so that's who that is. So it's not a new addition. However, Jojo Jackie did join during the last roster change, so he's a new addition to them.
That is correct.
And that is different than Jackie Rudo, who was on High Voltage. They're 2 completely separate players.
Do you know where Jojo Jackie came from?
I do not. I'm actually not entirely sure that he has been in the Gold League before. I know he's been around for a while. I'd have to double check on that one. I want to say Refuse, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong on that one. I'd have to check. Jackie Rudo, on the other hand, who we've mentioned and who came back to High Voltage, has been around for a very long time. Even played back on Fnatic when they had a World of Tanks team. So I'd like to see him start playing again. He came back and was supposed to be playing with High Voltage. However, they obviously are no longer with us. So maybe we'll see him again next season.
So both teams hesitant to make a move. Just setting up, and it's almost like an even split across the board as far as the map is placed out for these two teams.
Yeah, and I do like the positioning out of Durgel for Deja Vu. With this Grill 15, he has pretty good shots down here, and if he can find a shot onto Yato or even Merle all the way back there, he's going to do a lot of damage just because he's in that grill, has very high alpha, so if he can get the connection, he'll do a pretty good job. Normally we see a lot of tanks such as Bat Shots and 140s out there, and it's very rare that you get those shots onto those heavy tanks playing that hold down. And so when they do expose, you want to make sure that you get the most out of it. So using a gun with a bit bigger alpha, such as the Grill, I think is a decently smart choice. Now, the other thing you have to look at, though, is the Bat Shots provide that flexibility late game. So besides doing that, they can flex around, they can go get mediums, and they can open up different flanks. Bringing the Grill kind of limits what they can do as a team in that sort of aspect. So we'll have to see if that comes into play. The Grill, obviously can't really contribute a whole lot of HP to the fight. It can't, really simp for other tanks. I mean, sure, you could try, but it's so small that I just don't know that it could really be effective at it. So it's one of these tanks that you bring understanding that, for the most part, it's going to be a tank that's going to be completely out of the fight, and its sole job is just doing damage. And Durgel is actually moving up with the rest of the team. It looks like they're going to make a pretty aggressive play towards this 3 line. And now what you got to wonder is, were Deja Vu paying attention to the match versus Apex on Tuesday? Did they see what Apex did, and are they going to do the same thing? Because if you look at it, they have Chase Potato sitting up there in the high ground in that I-7, ready to shoot X-Soldier and Pompous if they leave. And these T-57s are already getting aggressive here in the south. MacTap and Harmless are going to just push up and over in these Tier 9 bats, and they're going to go get Smiley Rage out. He is pretty much isolated to the point where I don't know that he'll have any support from the 50Bs.
Yeah, and Smiley Rage will take out a Harmless. He's got to be careful. MacTap Putin in his face with that Tier 9 bat.
And they are going 1v1, and they actually don't get the kill on Smiley Rage. They bounced a little bit, and Harmless got picked off before he could get over there. So now Mactap Putin has no choice but to get up and run away.
And there goes a Smiley Rage to My Little Putin.
Meanwhile, Aggressor trying to find some shots, not getting too many connections though, so backed off, opened up his next clip, and is already reloaded again. Meanwhile, Durzel trying to find some shots, and he finds a connection on X-Soldier, who's now a one-shotter.
Yeah, very nice shot, and X-Soldier really has to be careful if he's taken out. That could completely swing this on the side of Deja Vu.
Yeah, Mactap Putin is a one-shotter though, so that could be a second gun down for Deja Vu as well. So both these teams have essentially one gun almost already out of the fight. I actually do like this play out of Siebel to tweet. They brought the AMX-30 off that hill, and they're going to get him into town and try to open up some new lanes, get his HP involved. So hopefully he can kind of get the rest of his team unstuck from that 3-line where they're basically pinned at this point.
You got to look at the time, James. Only 3 minutes and 28 seconds left. And CD is on defense, so I mean they're fine with what they're doing, and they are making it a point to move around a little bit on defense, so as to stay too stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mactap's just trying to find some shots in the south there. However, he does get lit, so he needs to be careful he doesn't get picked off. Merle's giving a little bit of his HP away for free. Mactap does make it over back into H1. So he might be able to find some shots. However, he's still lit. And Merles is moved back up to B2. He's not up on the same boost that he was on before, but he should have some good vision down the south.
My Little Putin finding X-Soldier. There it is, that one shot you were talking about. And now they have the gun advantage, as well as an HP advantage. And that's not just because of a gun. I mean, look at the team of CD. It is bleeding significantly more than Deja Vu. Jojo Jackie needs to be careful about going too aggressive. The entire team right now of CD has nothing left to give, and there goes a tank. Durzel going to find Pompous. Although he is being flanked by Mariel. That's not going to work. He goes for the ram and ends up killing himself. And now Jojo Jackie falls, and that's going to do it. Deja Vu 3-0.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
Well, trend's holding true. Like I said, Deja Vu have a much better record on this map overall, and their game plan just seemed pretty solid. This is a defense that CD are running for the second time. They ran almost an identical defense against Apex, and it didn't work then. Apex set up beautifully and broke it. And Deja Vu, well, not as elegant as Apex on the last match day. They still get the job done, and they break that defense. So maybe they need to go back to the drawing board overall in that strat and maybe move some stuff around. I understand what they're going for as far as trying to establish 3-line control. However, the problem is what a lot of these teams have figured out is they can be pinned into that 3-line away from their caps, and they're kind of stuck in a situation where once the attacking team wants to make a play, there isn't a whole lot for them to do.
Right.
And they're just able to get a lot of their guns onto the same targets, and it kind of gives one or two tanks a hard choice of, do we stay here and try to fight with what's in front of us, or do we try to back out so they can't shoot us? But then when they're in on 3-line, they have a lot of guns sitting off towards the middle of the map, and they can open up those shots on the back of the tanks as they try to pull out of there and get safe.
And Durzel and Master Putin, Mactap means Master, so they are sitting at the top. Durzel with 4,800 damage in that grill. No surprise the alpha that gun has, but Durzel also finding the shots. And then you have Smiley Rage for the team of CD trying to do something, make it work with 2,900 damage coming in at 113, but it's just not enough, with Fixer being the next one all the way down to the bottom of the list. And then again, here's the remainder of CD.
Yeah, well, what you have to remember is Smiley Rage was actually one of the first ones to go down for his team in that 113. He got caught out and went down. So even while being one of the first ones down, he was able to put up some of the most damage on his team.
Yeah.
So, and that's, like they said, it's been a pretty consistent trend. They constantly are able to put up a lot of damage even when they're not winning these games. And because these series tend to go a bit longer, they also have more opportunities to put up more damage.
It's a really tough situation right now for CD to be in, and you got to go look back to what X Soldier was saying. They need to take it more seriously, and I don't really necessarily know what he means by that in the most serious aspect of the term, but something is not right with CD right now.
Well, we've listened in the comms as far as we can imply from that. They've kind of been a little bit rough. There's a lot of useless chatter. Certain players arguing about, I just bounced or I did this or whatnot. And you got to remember, X Soldier's coming from a very aggressive atmosphere with Apex, where everyone's very, business as usual, basically.
Yeah. Well, I really want to know exactly what it is that CD needs to do. They have fixed their lineup a little bit. They've added new players, and Real X Soldier, now their caller, still have really high damage dealing members, but maybe it is what X Soldier said. It's just because the series is longer. I don't know.
Yeah, so looking at the teams here, Deja Vu coming in with a 113, an IS-7, a 215B, 250Bs, an AMX-30 of their own, and Maxi Putin in that Batchat AP. And it looks like Nationwide is going to go up towards the same A1 climb. Meanwhile, CD coming in with an E100, a 215B, a 113, 250B is a Batchat, and an RU-251. The only other team I think that we've seen bring an E100 on this map to this point is M60s.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct.
Now, we've seen E100s a couple times this season.
Mostly on mines.
Exactly, mostly on mines is that tank behind the hill to get the proc slides and just be hard to kill, essentially. But we haven't really seen them a whole lot on Ghost Town this season.
Which team brought 3 E100s? I think it was actually on this map. Do you remember that? It was 3 E100s.
I remember it, but the teams are completely escaping my mind right now. Now
that didn't work for them, by the way.
No, they ended up losing. In fact, I think it was CD. They tried to go for the middle cap, or maybe it was high. I'm pretty sure it was high. They tried going for the 2 cap.
It might have been high.
Yeah, I remember the play. They tried going for the 2 cap. They tried sitting there against some cap pressure. They put one of the E100s behind the crane, and then they had some in the courtyard, and they just got worked apart. I think it was by Rival, just kind of worked the different angles and kind of chewed through them.
Maybe, yeah.
I'd have to check on that. Now, for those that are familiar with Clan League, where we have a lot of the clans play the same format, attack defend, but they can bring 14 players. When they have played Ghost Town in the past, we've tended to see a lot more E100s, especially down in the Challengers League, as it's called, the smaller division. They tend to bring a lot of E100s because it's a lot of HP, and it is a lot of firepower in terms of raw alpha. 750 damage.
It's a big gun.
It hits hard. Don't get me wrong. However, the problem is its DPM is near the worst of the tier 10 heavies. It sits at around 2200 base DPM, which in comparison to 215B sits around 2700 DPM.
Oh, let's actually just go ahead and go right into a listen-in with the team of Deja Vu.
Arms clipping.
E100's tracked, E100's tracked.
Dirge, Dirge, just going down.
Behind you, Dirge.
Yeah, I can't, I'm just gonna work on the E100.
Alright, guys.
Can't really do much about that.
That's a very bad crossfire for them.
How they can't get out.
Yeah, but I'm gonna die soon.
Can you get safe regress there? We just need
Kinda.
to
Chase, we wanna kind of push now.
Yeah? That's what we're doing.
50Bs are gonna be clipping.
Alright, I'm gonna get shot by Z100 soon. I really need help.
HP's still gonna be really even. Nice, Harm. Just maybe go forward.
Arm's going down.
Yeah. Sorry, you did a lot of damage.
Reloading.
And we still have Nation doing
Can you
constant
try to
damage.
get Jojo?
Guys, I'm reloading.
Okay.
I'm gonna go.
20 seconds.
Nice on you.
HP's definitely still even.
Nice.
So one thing you have to remember is we have these fancy HP mods. The players do not. They have to play on a 100% vanilla client.
Right.
So they were under the impression that HP's even, when in fact they're actually up by about 3,000 right now. And to be fair, you got to remember that when tanks get delit, they can't always see them or where they're going, and they have no way of really keeping track of the HPs other than their own memory. And so sometimes you kind of think things are a bit different than they actually are.
Guys, it's... we're losing so bad, all of a sudden you realize that, no, you're actually winning, or even if it's even.
Well, sometimes what happens is you have 1 or 2 tanks that are on full HP left on their team and everything else is low, but you only see those high HP tanks because they're what get rotated to the front, so you think, oh, they have so much HP right now, like, what are we doing?
And the reason I kind of poked fun at it is because for us, it's like acts of God. We can see everything. We know everything that's happening everywhere all the time. These teams do not. They have to take those educated guesses or go off basically what they saw last. So, I mean, it was honestly a good call to say, hey, it's even, and then you just saw Aggressor take someone out, and they're like, okay, now we have the lead, even though they had the lead the whole time.
Yep, and just a reminder to the viewers at home, what you have to remember is, like we were saying, we see everything that they necessarily can't.
Right.
So when the names go yellow, it means they're spotted. So that's when the whole rest of the team can see them. So that's the same thing that happens when they're triggered. Their Sixth Sense is triggered, one of the Commander crew skills. So if you don't have it on your Commander, the first perk that you get is Sixth Sense. Definitely put that on there. If you have the gold to spend on it, then train something else that you can take advantage of as you grind it up, say Camo.
Right.
But then once you get 100% on that first crew skill, retrain Sixth Sense. It's
Gotta get Sixth
one
Sense.
of the most important crew skills. That said, looking at the damage here, Chase Potato on that 113. Also, they're collared, remember, 2,700
2,700. And Fixer, the only one on the first page worth of damage, doing 2,500 in the 215B, and that's it for Team CD.
Yeah, everyone else, Deja Vu, just doing so well. And then just look at all these guns that couldn't get in the fight once again for CD. This is something I didn't expect. Giving Deja Vu the edge, even though they've been playing somewhat lackluster in the past couple match days or weeks, I still would have at least given a few rounds to CD. At least. Yeah, looking down at the breakdowns here, Deja Vu, this is one of their more played maps. They started off playing it very well this season. They had a pretty good win rate. However, it's kind of been tanking as of recent. A lot of, I think this was kind of their default
This coming
pick.
up map?
Yeah, it's coming up map. By default, they'd always played this map pretty well, so I think what happened is this became one of their safe picks. However, the problem was that they stopped picking up rounds on it. They started doing as well as they wanted, but they kept picking it over and over again, and they really haven't gotten everything together. Now, it would be great if they can come in here, get a nice victory on the first round, and end this 5-0, as far as if you're a fan of Deja Vu. CD, however, they really need to get something going. At this point, 3 points is out.
Yeah.
They need to get at least 2 out of this, because you got to remember, also later tonight, High are going to be playing. They play in our last match versus M60, so it's going to be a tough match for them. But at this point,
both those teams, 15 points.
1 or 2 points, just going to overtime essentially at this point, could decide which of these teams go home or not. Because you got to remember, we only have one more regular season match day left next Tuesday.
Correct, and then we go straight into the playoffs. So it's do or die for right now, in my opinion, for either CD or for High. And showing this from CD, it's very troubling.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's just, I kind of feel like they're just not on right now. You kind of know how some teams kind of have that on-off switch, and right now it seems like that something's just not gelling with this team.
And I could agree with you 100%. Let's get into potentially the final map between Deja Vu and CD.
Muravanka, a map with a great number of buildings, bushes and trees, amongst which teams hide for most of the battle. The attacking team begins the battle from the top of the village, and the defenders start from the bottom of the map. Both bases are better controlled from the hill near the first base, and from the green in the lower left corner of the map. There are many attack directions. The attacking team often attempts to gain the attention of defenders by putting pressure on the first base, whilst manoeuvring several tanks behind the second base to deliver fire into the defending's flank. Team setups are very diverse, but the players often choose the fastest tanks, even for heavy setups. They could even bring SPGs.
And looking at the lineups, Deja Vu bringing a T57, a 215B, an IS-4, 3 Batchets, and a Crusader SP. So once again, breaking out the cheese.
My favorite strategy.
It is definitely a bit of a gimmick. However, they have made it work in the past, and it's actually a strat that's been picked up on over in Europe. I believe it was Gohard I saw running it last week. So a lot of teams see the practicality in it. It's a matter of executing, though.
Right.
Meanwhile,
I think that's probably why I have the biggest issue, just to interrupt your thought real quick, with this strat, is because when it's used, it's not really used effectively, and it never works, which is why I have contention with it. But
so here's what you have to think about. If bringing one tank guarantees that the other team's not going to run a certain strat, is it worth it at that point?
No, it would be.
Because at this point, look, the reason why it hasn't been working is because teams understand, all right, they have this already, so this 2 caps out of the question essentially at this point. We just can't bother doing this.
Yeah.
So they have to come to a plan B. So you sacrifice 1 tank essentially. It's like playing with 6. But your understanding is 9 times out of 10 the other team isn't going to touch that 2 cap. So you lose a tank to have more control of the map as a whole, I guess. And looking at the lineup, 113 and IS-7, 3 bat shots, a grill, and a 1390 out of Siebel to Tweet. Ex-Soldier already taking some damage from that Crusader SP. And I've said it before.
48 at a time, but hey, paper cuts can kill eventually.
Yep, as I was about to say, death by paper cuts. However,
that's not a paper cut. That's a nice shot.
That's a good shot. It was actually a Fixer Reloaded that showed us how to properly angle an IS-7 last match day on steps. He was just playing that hole down perfectly. And
what
it was
it? I think it was 4,800 damage blocked.
Yeah, it was like 20 shots that he blocked from like 3 different bat shots firing at him. And so, good job there. However, the problem is
ooh, 118, not bad.
Not a bad pen. And see,
it's something.
and even with bringing that, they're not necessarily a full tank down because, any sort of HP that he can contribute is something. However, that shell just hit his gun and didn't penetrate, didn't do any damage. Didn't even damage his gun for that matter. And Deja Vu going with a pretty standard defense. However, the thing that always makes me laugh is they're actually running a very passive defense, and they have 2 different tanks in passive positions, essentially, at this point. They have Maktat Putin over at K6, who has been firing, but then Nationwide in the bush at H5 has also been firing. So, a lot of teams have been favoring...
is just getting slowly taken out of this fight, and finally the burst from My Little Putin, he's gone.
Yep, and a lot of teams have been favoring this double scout setup where they run double passive scouts, and it really messes with these teams as far as trying to figure out who's sitting where passive. And so even if they find one of them, they really don't have the time to deal with finding both passive scouts in under 10 minutes. It's a lot to do. So the combination of having the double passive scouts and that Crusader SP, that's got to make things pretty difficult for CD right now.
This is... I got to give this this round's favors so far to Deja Vu. I mean, they're looking so clean. In fact, none of them have even taken any damage, and there's already a tank down for Team CD, and Fixer is about at half HP. Only 5 minutes, 5:50 left. Let's see exactly what the composure like for Deja Vu is right now. Let's get a listen in.
He's probably like, I know.
There you
go.
Be careful. I get it. I better get him.
Fixer's probably like, he's right in fucking front of me.
Shh. Full safe.
Full safe.
Full safe.
Full safe.
Be serious.
I mean, I'm in a passive bush right here. Okay,
Yeah.
so like this girl can't poke out.
Fixer, come back.
Hey, yo, 90's running. Can we shoot him?
Can we shoot that 13?
I bounced 3 shots out.
Yeah, I bounced off him as well.
Can I kill him?
No.
Not yet. We don't
No,
know.
no, no, no. Play it
They
safe.
could have
Play it
everything.
safe. Play for this 100%.
Yo,
win,
five
guys.
men.
Bat
Bat
shot.
chat, bat chat.
I have shots.
Okay.
We're sitting.
Arm's lit again.
Don't get grilled, guys.
Yeah, I'm forcing clip. I'm loading APCR so I can snipe.
Fixer's back.
Still have a bat.
113 coming back, guys.
113
Yep,
coming.
Yep.
Just demolish them.
113's probably gonna YOLO in to spot you. That's what that bat's for.
I could go here.
They wouldn't YOLO in that. They would
No,
YOLO
no,
in
don't
1390.
copy.
They're not going to YOLO a 113.
90, please.
Yep.
Just one shot. That's all I need.
I hit him. Why am I so happy that I hit him?
You did like 10 damage.
Hey.
Bat
Shot.
shot.
Okay.
Other bat. Murrell.
Here they go.
Murrell.
A lot of control out of Deja Vu.
Well, at this point,
A member asking, can I please go kill Fixer? No.
at this point, it's basically just them playing with their food, you almost feel. At least that's their attitude. And they're sitting there pretty firm right now. They want to go kill Fixer. They were even kind of So like, Fixer, come back, come
Yeah,
back,
come
let me
back.
kill you. He's just sitting there passive in that bush right now, and he wants to just fire. But the problem is when you're passive like that, as soon as you fire, you lose the camo
Right,
of both
so
the bush
he
around
can't,
you and
yeah.
your tank's natural camo.
But I really like the position from Deja Vu and their caller right now. It's perfect. They have the advantage, and you heard him say, let's take that 100% win. There's no reason to take any risks, and this is the Deja Vu that I was talking about that we used to see.
Well, and the other thing to remember is with picking up this win, they'd only be on 6 points from 6 games, which is still...
They would double their points right here with this win.
Exactly. And, now that said, I am a fan that they're starting to pick up some form right before the playoffs. They're already guaranteed. So they need to make sure that they have stuff ready. I do like what Wally said beforehand, where they felt they were playing strats that were just too far ahead of them, and they're kind of simplifying things down. And notice, that's exactly what they've done. They have not... Deja Vu have not brought out anything mind-blowing right now, strat-wise. But what they've brought out, they have executed very, very well. The basics are all solid. The teamwork is there. And they're putting down CD. Essentially, it's going to be 5-0 at this point, unless CD can find some sort of miracle, maybe pick up a couple ammo racks.
That's a miracle it's going to need to be.
They only have 3 minutes to do it, so they need to get going. So once again, the trend of talking trash before a match coming back to haunt teams once again happening.
Does not pay off. It's got to be a theme this season.
M60s have done it. Get Flanked have done it.
Eclipse has done it.
Yep. So
the only team that hasn't done it, actually, I think one of the only teams that does it, Apex. And where are they right now? Sitting in first place.
Wonder if there's something there. Maybe it's Apex has some voodoo dolls sitting in the back room that Comps messes with.
Playing God.
Yeah.
I don't really know what CD is doing right now. They have less than 2 minutes now.
And there's out of options at this point. It's kind of like I said earlier. The on switch just isn't there for them. You don't see anything that really remotely resembles the game plan other than just YOLOing into a bunch of passive guns like Merle right here. And Nationwide finally starts firing because they understand they're in a great position. They have 1 minute and 40 left. And they just have way too much HP to lose at this point.
This is going to be a 5. This is actually the first 5-0 we've seen in kind of a while.
Yeah, definitely. However, once again, Deja Vu, just very simple strats, but they were executing them just very well.
And
putting down CD.
Maybe it was the can't say it.
Complications?
Overcomplications of things. There it is. I got it, James.
I don't disagree with trying those complicated strats, especially versus someone like Apex. However, the thing is you do not want to be known as that team that's going to do that consistently. And I think that's the trend they were kind of falling into, was trying to get too creative, trying to force too many things.
Maybe they got, they were convinced they got so close to taking out Apex that it would work all the time against everyone else, but...
Yeah, but I think they've kind of realized that what they've been doing so well has just been doing the basics extremely well, and especially with the new additions of Mekhtep, Putin, and Aggressor, that they're playing very consistent, and they add that little bit extra player skill to the team overall, and when you combine that with just very solid, well-thought-out strats, it just seems to be the right recipe. So a clean 5-0 win.
There it is, 5-0
for
Deja Vu. Very well done. It's nice to see this team back in form a little bit.
Yeah, so a very quick match. However, I kind of feel that CD just weren't turned on today. That they didn't really challenge Deja Vu through a lot of those matches. Ghost Town, there was a couple ones where it was a little bit...
complacency from them, it seemed.
Yeah, it was very... They got to one opening spot, and then they kind of just stuttered out. It started off with Ruinberg. They had an idea what they wanted to do. They wanted to be very aggressive. And then after that opening play, they kind of sat there, and they got out-traded, and they just sat and sat and sat. And they didn't come up with any sort of plan B outside of, all right, we're just going to sit here and trade and fire shots back and forth and hope that we come out on top.
And Deja has been very, very beneficial to Deja Vu.
Yeah, and Milo Putin, as always, doing 2,500 damage nationwide. Also coming in there at 1,800 despite being passive for most of the game. Looking at it right now, I'm just kind of curious. Let's find out. Nationwide, where are you, bud? Nationwide, spotting 2 for 4,000 assistance damage. And Mekhtep Putin spotting 2 as well for 2,300 assistance damage. So both bad shots placed very well, both able to constantly get lights. Another thing to just kind of chuckle at right there, Chase Potato sitting in 9th, 36 shots fired.
He still did almost 1,100 damage.
Yeah, almost 1,100 damage. So really not bad. And the other thing to note is almost all of that was over 300 meters, but before 600 meters, which is about the range on that gun.
And then Deja, like I said, coming out really on top for his team there, and it's going to be a 14,000 damage. Average is 2,800. What a series for him.
Yep. And another thing to note is it's games like these that will start bringing Smiley and Pompous back down into the overall averages.
Yeah.
Lowering them a little bit further, or even just on the totals.
Correct.
So allow these other teams to get in there. And with M60s playing high later and Eclipse going up versus Rival, couple of matches that could go the distance, be quite long matches, so there's going to be a lot of damage up for grabs in those.
Well, Deja Vu, seeing them in form, it's great. CD, it's almost looking like they could be in relegation zone. Now, of course, High has to go through Aquatic M60s later tonight, but CD do not find themselves in a good spot.
Well, and another thing, give me 1 second to check. If I remember, it's going to be Deja Vu versus Eclipse on the last match day, but then CD versus 07.
And 07 look good.
7 are looking, one, they're looking good, and 2, they're 3 points ahead of everybody right now.
All right, well, let's get right into it with Wally Whiff. Congratulations. I got to say, man, this is the team that we remembered from the first round robin. And maybe it was those, do you really think it was just running those strats all the time?
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys play so much better tonight? What was the decision?
We pretty much, we said, all right, tonight this 5-0 run is stupid. We gotta end this. So we went back with the basics. We played strats that we knew we could play, that we were very comfortable with, and I guess Aggressor wasn't that bad of a thing to have.
Definitely.
I think X-Soldier might be a little bit wrong because obviously we just wrecked them. So
fair enough. And so what I was going to ask is, speaking of Aggressor and MacTap, now that you've played with them for 2 matches, how do you feel they're fitting into your team?
I mean, I love them. They're great guys. Very communicative, or very whatever the word is. I don't know. They're great. They play well. They communicate very well. They're great additions to the team. Solid starters. I love them.
Yeah, well, and it's great. Again, it's great to see you guys winning again. Congratulations. That's what we praised you on in the beginning. It was your ability to execute on such a not basic but fundamental level. You guys are really strong at that. So we hope that you carry that forward into the online qualifiers, essentially the playoffs. Yeah, the online playoffs. So again, good stuff, Wally and Deja Vu. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
So, and that's